All right, fellas. Today I'm joined by, I get to call him now Gio, but you'll probably know him by Giovanni Marsico, a name that I had heard for years. I literally can't tell you how many times people would say, do you know Giovanni Marsico? Do you know Gio? Have you heard of Archangel Summit? Uh, uh, Honestly, Gio, it must have been north of 10 people over the course of the last handful of years that the name was brought up. And so at some point, you're like, I can't wait to meet this human because people keep trying to connect us and tell me about Gio. And finally, I think it was Brian Johnson that maybe had sent a text message between us. So shout out to Brian and thank you for that, Brian. And then Gio came to town here in Austin and we got a chance to hang out for a little bit with a small group of people, saw some comedy, and just had a wonderful conversation. And it doesn't take a lot of time before you start to realize that Giovanni wears his heart outside for the world to see. And there's also something I haven't said to you, Gio, directly, but I want to tell you and everybody listening that I really appreciate about you is like there's this quiet intelligence that's very present whenever you're around. And it's like, I'm not saying something right now, but if I did, I would have something to add to the conversation. And I think that's a sign of maturity of you do know that you always have value to add. You're just not having to fill every moment with every word to try to grasp at value around you. You attract people. I think that's what Jesse Elder had said when he was talking about what makes you so great is some people just magnetically draw others in. And that's clearly evident by what you do for a living, how you make an impact in the world, what you do and how you share your gifts with your movies, which I'll mention as part of the bio here. One of which I was watching this morning with Ocean. I was watching Dreamer with my 9-year-old Ocean, thinking about our conversation today. I was like, dude, let's put this on and let's watch this together. And beautifully inspirational documentary. There's also Hero. That one was released quickly, right? But then it's still
We had an online world premiere. First of all, thank you for having me. This is so fun.
yeah.
We had an online world premiere a few weeks ago, and it releases in later in 2024.
I'm thrilled about it because I love movies. I love film. I love that way of learning about life. I just have always appreciated. I think I'm a visual person, and I love the storylines. Ocean had so many questions, by the way, watching Dreamer. He's like, "How is that woman flying a plane without her hands?" And right, and how does a spaceship land back on Earth? It was beautiful to see his curiosity get sparked in such a cool way. So thank you for that. I was literally thinking as I was driving him to school today how appreciative I was for the work you're doing in the world. And I was like, I bet you Gio would be really thrilled to be a fly on the wall watching me have this conversation with my son and seeing the real life daily small moment impact that his big work is having on this one little father-son duo, in Austin, Texas. So the films are a big part of what you're up to. I mentioned Archangel Summit, which is the event that people kept telling me about. Many of my friends have stood on your stages and shared their messages. I was watching the video of the event, and dude, there's not only incredible people that many in this community would know their names, but dude, then there's like this theatrical element too, that you have this artistic element that I haven't seen at any other event. And I think that's what you're known for is kind of testing the edges and creating something great. I'll plant a seed for everybody listening, by the way, that there is something very cool about an event coming up this fall, right? That
Right.
we've got that I want to make sure we get to in the show. So I'm going to start off by talking to Gio about I want to ask him a question about his childhood. I want to talk a little bit about fatherhood as he is a father of 3. A married man, as of this last year, by the way, been with his partner for almost a decade, married this past year. I'm excited to talk about family life. And for all of you out there who have an interest in influencing people, hosting events, creating spaces for others to thrive and share their gift. And by the way, if you're a dad, that's you, right? Like this doesn't have to be professionally, because we can pull a lot from these professional experiences and bring them into our homes. How do we hold space and let people have a voice in our homes? How do we let them express their talents? You know, your dinner table is a mini conference, you know, every night. So I'm going to attempt to build some bridges amongst these genius things that Giovanni has done. And so officially the CEO and founder of Archangel, a global community of entrepreneurs who are on a mission to impact millions of people around the world. His Archangel Summit, the big event that we have kind of seated here and we'll talk about, and of course the movies that he's a part of. And there's more, but so that we actually can ask him some questions and have a conversation here, I'll leave it at that. Giovanni, thank you, man. I really wanted to honor you with some of those words and to really set the stage for our convo today. So appreciate you, man. Looking forward to this.
This is going to be so much fun. Can I share a quick story? You
Did
mentioned
anything?
our mutual friend Jesse Elder. So I was
Anywhere you want to go.
in Austin for an event with my wife, and I told him that I was coming, and I said, I don't know if we'll have a chance to connect, but let you know my schedule once we're locked in. And our plane landed. We checked into the hotel. My wife and I are super into health, so the first thing we do is we dump our bags and go straight to a gym,
Yeah.
and we train at Lifetime.
Yeah.
So uh, as we're leaving, I'm calling an Uber to come, and it was confusing getting out of this gym. It was like in the middle of a mall, and there was an Office Depot or Office Max store. So I told the Uber, that's where, pick us up in front of this Office Max. And the second I hit submit on the button for the Uber, I look up and Jesse's walking towards us. And I thought, what? And he had to buy pens of all. So I said, what are the statistical probabilities of us? There was like a 10-second window for us to interact with each other, and we found each other. And I feel like uh my wife and I, we manufacture serendipity, and it happens on a regular basis, and we try to stay present and in awe of it, even though it almost feels like it's normal now. And I realize, and I think it's there for all of us. We just don't tune in to these magical moments that happen. And so I'm grateful to be on your show. I'm grateful for Jesse, and can't wait to chat with you.
Dude, those moments specifically with Jesse, who was there that night with us, of course, but I've had several of those with Jesse, including a couple weeks ago. My wife and I have an overnight date. We're downtown. Nobody is out. It's like 6:30 in the morning on South Congress. And dude, we stumble upon Jesse and one of his buddies, Joe. You probably know Joe, Stolte. Anyway, he's here in Austin, new friend. I just met him last month, but I stumble upon Jesse multiple times. He and I've run into each other here in Austin, maybe more than any other human. So I'm with you. And on that note, man, I wasn't planning to ask you this question, but we're here. When it comes to serendipity and these coincidences, and we might call it magic or whatever word we want to label it with, how much do you subscribe to that being called in by you, this reticular activating system? I want to buy a Honda, so all I see are Hondas, that type of thing, versus like the universe aligning for us, being at the mercy of magic in a way. How much do you think about that? And maybe even like to the point of like astrological charts or super woo ideas. Where does that enter your world, or where do you not let it enter your world?
I think I think it's a bit of both, and not that it's a cop-out answer or I'm cheating, but I feel like there is something around frequency that I'm actually getting more and more obsessed with, that when you are attuned to a specific frequency, it comes back to you. Like you are sending out a message, but you're also a receiver, like an antenna kind of thing. And the more you are open to it, the more you'll see that it's already happening, and you can create it yourself. Like uh, more and more, I'm obsessed with the idea that life is a story that we have a lot more control over with respect to the script. And not only being the main character of the story, but being the narrator and the set designer and the producer and director.
Yeah.
And it's, if you have that paradigm, life gets really interesting.
Yeah, that world, I feel like at my stage of life at 48, energy is the thing that I used to call bullshit on when I was younger. Energy work, whatever. Cause I wanted like, no, I touch that with my finger and it tips over. I got that. Everything else, not so sure about. Seems like easily manipulated. And I use that word as like a malintentioned space of like I can just call it energy when I don't want to actually call it anything else or do the work itself. But now playing energetically with something, like I'll give you a practical example. I would study all the things I should say or not say to my wife to have a great marriage, right? And then I would repeat those words. But when I would shift, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And the variable was the energy I brought to the words, period. Like I could say the words that whatever relationship cult told me to say, but if my energetic body was off, the
Right.
words didn't matter. And so the music became more important to me. The feeling behind things became more important to me. And I understand that I might be conflating different modalities, but ultimately, I'm giving more attention to energy and frequency, like you've talked about, than I ever have in my life. And I'm giving it, I think, an amount of respect that it deserves. I'm excited to see what I learn the next 10 years about it. Yeah.
I'm definitely doing a deep dive.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, it's something for us to follow up on. Let's take a step back in time, Gio, because I really wanted to talk about something about your childhood, if we can go back that far,
Mhm.
that I know is part of your story. I'm interested not only in you, but how my decisions and uh, the the experiences of my children are shaping who they are today. Years ago, you were told that you were gifted, but that wasn't necessarily a positive thing in that moment. Can you tell me and everybody listening about what happened there when you were labeled that, and then how you shifted that label later?
For sure. So I grew up, born and raised in Toronto, Canada. I'm still here. This is where I live. I love the city. And my parents immigrated here from Italy. So I was born in Toronto. They came from Italy. And when I was in grade school, or fifth grade specifically, the entire school board, and I don't know if they still do this, but the entire school board back then did IQ testing for every student. And I scored super high. And because of that, they labeled me gifted. And there was special programming for gifted children where once a week we'd be bused to a different school to be with other quote unquote gifted kids in a gifted program, which was awesome, except for when I would show up to my regular school the next day, I would constantly be made fun of and bullied for being smart
Mm.
and picked on. And it was a weird phenomenon, and it turned painful for me because I couldn't understand. Like there was the traditional reasons why people would be bullied or picked on. I never understood why that was the reason. And I developed a negative relationship with the word gifted because it was the thing that made me stand out. And if you fast forward a few years into high school, like we're basically the same age. When I started high school, I fell in love with comic books, and at that time, it wasn't cool. Uh, at least not like it is today with superhero culture and all that kind of stuff. It was, you had to almost read it in secret. And I fell in love with Marvel, like the Spider-Mans and the Iron Mans and all that. But it was the first X-Men comic that I opened. And I can't forget this moment because the first, I cracked it open to the middle of the book. And the first thing I read was the phrase Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters,
Mm.
which is a major part of that storyline. And very specific to me, there was that word gifted that I learned to hate. And in the X-Men paradigm, it means superpower. And it just changed my whole um, definition of what it meant to be gifted. And then I fell in love with the X-Men stories because it was about these kids who had a thing about them that made them stand out that they hated. It was a curse because they didn't fit in. And I loved how the writers of these stories tuned into actual culture because that's why people get bullied. It's something about them that stands out. They probably have no
Totally.
control over it. And learned, I guess, at an earlier age than most people, that the things that make us stand out are our gifts.
Mm.
And if you harness those gifts and you can actually turn them into something deeper, and I call it a superpower, just like the stories. So when I was in high school, I would tell my friends, when I grow up, I'm going to create a real life X-Men. I'm going to lead a team of superheroes. And that was my running joke in high school. And I was very serious. No one took me seriously. And now I lead a team of superheroes. So there you go.
God, I love that, man. I think, dude, Gio, few things bring me more joy than learning about the dots being connected for somebody that you can like have this step back, look at their life and see the broad strokes that make up like this happened to you as a child. You first gifted was this challenge, and now you help gifted people express themselves in this superhero element and like the like literally real life and X-Men like this is awesome, man. It makes, and it also just makes it. I love falling in love with people because of their true story. Like everybody, I love that. It's one of, it's so funny. I was talking to Tatiana about the things that energize you as a human. What are they? And that's one for me. That I this is why I geek out on these shows, man. It's like it's just understanding what your storyline. Beautiful, man. I love that. How do you speak to your kids now or through their lives when it comes to expressing their gifts in the world, using their talents? And if you can, Gio, maybe give some specific examples or specific language, even beyond just the theory of it. But as a man who's spent his life processing this, thinking about it, talking about it, how does that look in your home life?
It's 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 so interesting because I feel like most, and not that I can speak for most parents, but most parents in times of stress fall back into what they know. Meaning, if you were raised a certain way, then that comes out when you're stressed. And I find for myself that, like, so growing up, the messaging to me was uh, get through school, get a degree, uh, use that to get a job, all of the things that are the maybe the traditional path. But I knew I was entrepreneurial very young. I started producing events when I was 16 that I um, like I knew it was my thing, event production, bringing people together. And I started doing these parties. I had 1,000 people at my first party, and it scaled up to like 5,000 people a week. And but the messaging was, don't do those party things. What are you doing? Because I was in nightclubs all night long, and not that I was doing anything negative. And my nickname back then was Johnny Angel because I never touched a drug. I was never drunk. I've never been drunk in my life. But all the things you associate with nightlife
Yeah.
was the risk, and I wasn't as focused on my school, even though I was getting good grades because with my, I floated through school. It was easy because of my IQ and all that. Um, and there was a conflict with my family because I didn't care as much about that direction. And I never actually graduated university. So all those things it was almost like being a black sheep kind of thing. Uh, and it also led to a path of confusion and maybe even depression and anxiety because I eventually stopped the events. I went to school, got a job, all those kinds of things, and it never felt fulfilling. And it always felt like I wasn't on the right path, but I didn't understand that that's what was happening. It only felt like anxiety.
Mm.
And so if I fast forward to today, it's I catch myself sometimes. And well, one more important note: the thing that makes us stand out when we're kids is usually the thing we're told to stop doing.
Mm.
So, as an example, if a child is super loud, we're like, stop doing that. If a child daydreams, stop daydreaming. If a child is silly or jokes around, stop fooling around. And it's because our parents are trying to help us fit in, because fitting in is how you survive, right? We have this 10,000 or more year old primitive programming that if you're not part of the tribe, you're going to be killed by a tiger. And we still have that as adults.
Yeah.
We don't want our children, I feel like most people don't want their children to quote unquote stand out or be bullied or all those kinds of things. Uh, but I'm constantly reminding myself, don't tell them to stop. encourage the things that are frustrating to the adults, because that's part of the mystery of what the gift is.
Ugh, dude, my body's in so much pain as you're talking about this because I can't help whenever I have these conversations with great guys like you, I'm thinking about all my moments as a dad where and I'm sometimes present to these in the moment when they're happening. When I'm telling Ocean, as an example, 9 years old, 1,000 questions, right? Very curious that I so want to nurture the curiosity, but at some point I have to be very, very careful because I'm like, stop with the questions, right? And I'm like, shit, this is the moment. This is the moment right here when he's with the therapist and he's like, I used to love to ask questions. And then when I was at the dinner table, my dad told me to stop asking questions. And so I did. I stopped asking questions when I was 9 years old. And, and I'm still working that out in therapy as a 35-year-old man. And I can just feel them bubbling up because there's mixed messages all the time
Right.
when, especially with that one, just do what I tell you to do. And then at some point you're like, but wait a minute, in the rest of your life, don't do everything everybody tells you to do. And I want you to not just, I don't want you to be obedient per se. I want you to be respectful and live. And you end up in this mix of like seeing how these statements that you make and how you treat your children are shaping them in such a profound way. And yet I can't explain all the nuances of how to listen and when not to listen to a 9-year-old.
It's, you know what the coolest part is? Uh, we are their teachers as much as they are our teachers.
1,000%.
There's this, we're co-learning. So I'll give you an actual specific example. One of our kids is 11 and plays soccer. And we, he's been doing it for a few years and he's awesome. And a few weeks ago, a friend of ours rented an indoor soccer field as a birthday party for his son. And it was a bunch of, so imagine 12 people playing soccer where half of us are adults, the other half are kids. But
Mm-hmm.
the adults are all super healthy. And like my friend is former Mr. Canada, Mr. Olympia competitor. So it's like serious athlete people. And our 11-year-old was kicking butt, like deking out around the adults. And my wife and I are like, what is happening? How? And he was playing completely unabashed and like so confident and so free. And it was amazing to watch. So we talked to him after, because then in his next game, he was almost hiding behind the opponents. So we asked him, what's going on? And he said, well, when I'm on the field, I'm nervous I'm going to make a mistake. So I'm purposely not being open to almost like not have the ball come to me, because if I make a mistake, the coach might get mad. Or it's like, whoa. So we had an amazing conversation to say, here's how to, your mantra on the field is get open. Just be in a place where your other teammates can get you the ball, because chances are they're scared that they're going to make a mistake. And if you're open, you give them relief. It's like, oh, there he is. I can pass the ball to him. And then we were talking, my wife and I were thinking, wait a minute, what's the lesson for us? And then for us, it was like, how do we get more open in our
Mm.
work that we're doing? How do we be more bold? Our family phrase now is get open for the year. It's like,
Whoa, dude, that's great.
so I feel like there's these lessons that bounce back and forth, that they're learning as
God.
much from us as we're learning from them.
Dude, that is one of the best articulations, Gio, of learning from your kids and with your kids and how you're co-teaching. If that type of humility, openness, self-awareness on your side, like especially that, what an honor to your child when you have this conversation around get open and then you show that you're actually reflecting on that, and then it becomes a family mantra, and like they feel powerful in the family, like they co-created the family mantra because of who they are and what they're doing. And man, that's cool. That's a
Well,
first for me.
here is the extension of that story. So I mentioned I was in Austin at an event.
Yeah.
Uh, there, there's someone, I won't say the names just to keep it private for now, but there's someone that would be a dream speaker at one of my big events, and someone that has a huge platform. It might be a challenge to even get through gatekeepers kind of thing. Um, and I've been chatting with their team about speaking, and it's been going well. Um, but I attend this event and they happen to be there just as a like a fluke thing.
That's cool.
They're not attending. They just happen to show up for a bit of it. And that it kicked in and get open. Right. So as soon as I saw them, I ran right up to them because and that's something I wouldn't have done in the past. And I said, "Hey, I'm speaking to blank and blank on your team about speaking at my event." And they're like, "Tell me more." And I explained the event that we'll probably talk about today. And I blew their mind. Like they're like, "Oh my God, yes." So had I not have that open
Wow.
conversation, right? It's wild how this stuff happens.
Wow. That's cool, man. See, that's the magic of these conversations, dude. I could have never imagined that's where we would have ended up right now.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, since you just mentioned the event, and this sounds like the perfect pathway to talk about it, um, maybe you could, maybe the prompt here for you is tell me about the event in a way that maybe you were articulating to this person where they
Right.
were leaning in saying yes, like, and you alluded before we started recording a little bit to some of what's happening. So to what degree you want to unpack this and unveil, and I know you'll leave some surprises, but dude, talk to us about Archangel Summit coming up in when is it, what month this fall?
September 21st.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's go. Tell me about it, man. I'm here. I'm
So
going to take notes.
we're known for our events and event production and experience design. It's something I love to do, right? So not only do we have speakers and a stage and an audience, but we create production, we create shows. We've had some of our events with like 30 circus performers on stage, and we create visuals, and it's already awesome to attend because to me, especially for a room full of either entrepreneurial people who all have a thing that starts with the letter A, like ADD or something, where keeping attention is a challenge, or people who are super into leadership or personal development. So we want to make them engaging and entertaining, and we care about aesthetic and creating emotion and those kinds of things. And we've been making these documentaries and film projects. The Dreamer film you mentioned won 3 Emmy Awards, and I'll talk about that in a second because we've put it on YouTube to give it away specifically for young people and parents with children. But I thought, how do we elevate this experience to the next level where it's people will be talking about it for days, weeks, and months after the event? And also, I've always had this dream of producing a fiction movie, like almost like a Hollywood blockbuster kind of thing. And all of these amazing things lined up for me to connect with the right people, where we're essentially like the best way to pitch this is, and this is what I said to this person the other night. Imagine if Christopher Nolan, who's my favorite director with films like Interstellar and Dark Knight and countless others, imagine if he created a personal transformation event. So we're going to film a movie that's of his caliber that plays throughout the day and then interacts with the audience and almost like the film comes to life, and the speakers are a part. So there's speakers on stage, including Hal Elrod, who I know you know,
Yep.
and Brian Johnson, who are both speaking at this event, and another 15 other like world-class personal transformation type speakers. And there's a storyline, and by the end of it, there's like a twist, uh, an M. Night Shyamalan kind of like there's a crazy climax twist to the story of the film and everything coming together so that you leave this experience transformed. You walk in as one person and you come out as the best version of you. And the event is called Unleashed. The film is called Unleashed. And we're going to mix media together in a very unique way that's never been done before.
Mm. Dude, there's so many ways that we could take this conversation. But one that I've got to ask you, man, is like, where does this creativity for you come from? Like, if you could teach a class on, and maybe you have, I don't even know, but if you did or have taught a class on creativity, what does it look like for you to get to this point where you're unveiling this incredibly creative endeavor? Can you tell me the story? Do you know? Is it just like, I don't know, John, it hits me? Or you're like, no, here's what I do. I go here, I set these conditions, I ask these questions. How much of it is how much? Yeah, like Do your best. I don't know. Maybe that's an impossible question to ask or answer.
I can
Sorry, but
try to, I've never taught this before. I can try to break it down, or at least give the elements of what has
yeah.
transpired, right? So I think I'm obsessed with film and movies. The first movie I ever watched was The Never Ending Story in a theater.
Yes. Yes. So good.
So what a great one to start with.
So good.
And I've seen more movies than most people have seen movies. I'll say that. And I've had this, I don't know what word to use, hobby or habit, where for the past 15 years, every weekend I go to a movie theater by myself.
Oh, it's cool.
Sometimes I'll bring a family member or the whole family, or it's a date with my wife, but I'm always watching a movie in a theater.
Mm.
And it's where I do brainstorming, and it's my escape, and I get my creative downloads, and I get immersed with story, and I love the immersion of it. And I love attending anything where you can buy a ticket. So, for example, I took you to Comedy Mothership, which is, I think, Joe Rogan's club.
Yep.
With comedy, I love concerts, music. Cirque du Soleil is my favorite thing ever. That's not my own event. It's like I love what they do, and they're very inspiring to me. Uh, and I love pushing boundaries of what's possible. And then I get my best downloads in the shower. And I think a lot of people say that, but I have a whole practice around shower downloads. Once I realized that's what happens, I now have a daily process for what I want to have as a download. We bought this house. Part of the checklist was the shower has to be epic for this purpose. It's like my little um, sanctuary
Yeah, that's cool.
for idea processing.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What makes an epic shower? What
It,
is
it's huge. You can fit like 20 people in there. It has 10 shower heads. It has like a rain one, all these different, but the one I love the most is having a jet of water hit right the like crown chakra, kind of cleansing up here, because that clears off the dust to allow ideas to go up and down. The other thing
that's
I do, and
cool.
if you want to get even more woo, isn't that the word? I don't know. I I have had a process for the past 12 years of speaking or communicating with my future self.
Mm.
And so and there's a cool story behind all of this. In 2011, I was in the real estate space. This is before launching Archangel. And I did really well in real estate in Toronto, and I secretly hated it. And I was very depressed and overweight. And but how do you tell people? I was winning awards. I was featured in media magazines as, one of the best people in this world or in this industry. But I was secretly depressed. So I hired a coach. Her name is Joanne Delcor. I'll always give her credit. And one of the things she taught me was speak to your future self for advice. And she said, visualize him, let's say 10 years in the future. What does he look like? What is he doing? And then name him something different than your own name.
Mm.
So my actual name is Giovanni. I called him Johnny Angel, which was my nickname
Mm.
in the DJ space or party world. I just liked it. So that's what I called him. And she said, whenever you have a big decision, ask yourself, what would Johnny Angel do? And it works. Like, it worked for me. And the idea is, have you ever seen the Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgame?
Yep.
Okay, there's a scene where Doctor Strange is floating around and his head is bobbing around. And he's like, I just went to 14 million different versions of the future. And Iron Man asks, in any of those, do we win? And he said, yeah, in one of them, we win. And the lesson for me is there are probably infinite versions of each of our futures based on choices we make. But in one of those futures is a version of us that has made all the aligned choices and is
Wow.
succeeding, right? So how do you speak to that person?
Yeah.
So that's
Mm.
the one I speak to. And
Mm.
I
Oh,
ask
yeah.
him, what do I do? Kind of thing. And in the shower is where I communicate with him. And I
Dude,
feel like
so
there's
good.
something about the water or the container of, I don't know what it is, but I get amazing ideas. And the most wild part of all of this is that I am today the person that 2011 version of me is spoke to.
Yeah.
I've become that person. It's kind of,
Yeah.
so now if that's true, then there's a version of me 10 years from now.
So were you doing this 10 years ago?
Yes,
Yeah. And how close to you do you recall how close you are now to being the person you thought you were talking to?
I am the person I used to talk to.
Wow, that's so
Even
cool, man.
physically. Like this is one specific example, but it's so funny to me because back then I had hair. And when we were chatting with my coach and I were chatting, she said, "What does he look like?" And I said, "It's weird, but he's bald, kind of like Professor X." And it's weird because I would never shave my head.
Wow.
I loved having hair. So like it's so weird. And if someone's listening to this and can't see me, I shave my head now. I didn't make the connections until I looked back at all this and it blew my mind. But and then in terms of where I am with I couldn't have predicted the films and all these cool things that have happened, but this is before I launched Archangel.
Yeah. Dude, unbelievable, man. And even did it hit you, by the way, when you created Archangel, Johnny Angel? Are you like, oh, I love Angel. I got to work that into the word? Or did it somehow, did you make that connection later? You're like, holy shit, I used to be Johnny Angel. Now it's Archangel. Like,
The name followed me my whole life. So the school where I was bullied in grade school was St. Gabriel the Archangel. The high
okay.
school where I started reading the comics was St. Michael's the Archangel. I just loved the word. I had no,
Uh,
it has nothing to do necessarily with angels or religion or spirituality. However, now looking back, it totally does. But more
yeah,
important,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
I'm a word geek. Like I love language and words,
Yeah, sure.
and I love etymology, which is like the
Yeah.
history of a word. So I realized 5 years into the company, I don't actually know what archangel means. I know the definition, but I don't know where it
Yeah.
comes from. So let me look
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
the history, and it's from ancient Greek, and the first part, archos, means leader, and angelos, the word for angel, means messenger. And
Mm,
it was like, whoa, because we're a giant community of leaders and messengers, which is
yeah.
it's nice and cool to say that, but I didn't actually, that's not the reason.
Yeah, that's cool. I got to tell you, this future self conversation this morning in the gym, I wrote down an idea for our spring retreat for our VIP group, and I'm looking to see if I have the question right here where I wrote it. Um, mm, I'm not going to be able to find it. Maybe. Nah, I can't find it right now, but it's in here. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Um, dude, I don't know what else is in this note, so I don't know if I can show the screen, but it says number 6, role play conversation with your kid 10 years from now, and also record the conversation. So the way I envision this, and it's right there in my note, is two guys getting together at our retreat, one guy interviewing the other member saying, okay, I'm going to ask you questions as if I'm your oldest child now, 10 years into the future, or whatever child you pick, right? Pick a child, fast forward 10 years. I'm going to ask you questions, uh, and you are going to tell me the answers as if, right? You're imagining you're having a conversation with your child 10 years into the future. Hey, what are you grateful that I did the
Nice.
last 10 years as your father? What did I say to you that had the biggest impact? What was our best experience? All into the future, dude. And then I also want them to record it. And I'm going to ask them to try to set a reminder of whatever reminder system they have for a 10-year, go to your calendar 10 years into the future, and then link to this file, to this folder, and listen to it and see how much is actually
Wow.
true 10 years from now. But can you create something right now that 10 years from now you'll want to look back on and say, I wonder what came true? Right. And
Yeah.
I think even the act of doing that and documenting it and putting it and setting a reminder makes it so much more robust than just like an imaginary, which is still powerful, but an imaginary conversation where you're like, this will come and go, but we create something concrete around it, which I'm excited about. So, dude, it's perfect. Serendipitous, man. You create these divine moments. I get it. Um, what, go back to your event for a minute, Gio, and talk to me about what And you could talk to me about the one that's coming up if you want, and tell me more about what might happen there, or choose your own adventure here. Go back in time and talk about some of the things that happened at your events that have been the most profound or the most exciting or joyful or transformational for you or your attendees.
I find that my favorite, selfishly, my favorite part, and it may not be the what the attendees say is their favorite part, but for me, my favorite part is surprise and awe.
Mm.
Meaning, it's almost like knowing a secret and then revealing the secret and watching the reaction. That when those things happen, I get so much pleasure. Even back in high school days. So the first event was exactly 30 years ago. So 2014. Oh, sorry, 1994 was the first event I ever did. And that's
Mm.
with 1,000 people. The year after, I thought, let's get creative with this and create a show. I don't know how, where this, like I'm 17, 18 years old. So we called the event Trip to the Moon. And part of it was because the venue was called Luna Ballroom, and Luna means moon. And it was an Italian banquet hall that I don't know how me and my best friend, like two 17-year-olds, got away with booking a venue and then sound and lighting and all this stuff. But at the time, a movie I loved was Apollo 13, the Tom
Mm.
Hanks film. And I thought, I want to do something wild to blow their minds. So this is me at 17 years old. I had two VCRs, like just to imagine, with the movie Apollo 13 on one side and then a blank VHS tape on the other. And I would literally, because this is how I had to video edit back then, I had no editing equipment. I cut out all the scenes with the actors. So all you saw was the actual rocket launch sequence with the countdown and then the rocket taking off. And we played that as an intro sequence at the event. And when the rocket took off, we had CO2 blasters, which are like these things that shoot smoke across the room, like smoke machines, but on steroids. And then we had fireworks and like indoor fireworks and all this. We created this insane show, and it blew people's, like, imagine a room full of high school kids, almost like at a WWE show and or that kind of thing where it was just a spectacle. And we were creating these things at 17 years old.
Mm.
It's those moments that are my favorite because it's like I
Wow.
have an idea and I'm thinking, how do we do this? And then how do we just blow people's minds? And I've been doing that at these events since. Whenever I do something like this, I want to have that thing happen.
Dude, you know why people kept wanting to put us together, Gio, is because the people that know my story and that know your story, I get it now. I totally understand. When I was 18, I got hired by Cutco. I was selling knives, as you know, right? But then very quickly I became in the company what was called a sales promotion manager. I was in charge of all their events. So it like in my early 20s, maybe 21, not so far off when you're getting your start, um, I had 1,000 Cutco reps in a room at the Lancaster Host in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I remember I got a boxing ring. So they would imagine this like in Cutco, you saw all these knives, and you come up on stage and you're announcing how many knives you sold, and everybody's like cheering you on. And I like had a boxing ring in the center stage. The whole theme was around like being the champ, and I was playing Rocky, and I actually had professional boxers boxing as people entered the room. And then for the people who won, I had custom robes made and custom gloves made as their like award. And like, dude, I felt so alive when people had a sense of awe. And talking about connecting dots back to when you were a kid, I remember the first moment I felt that when I woke up early one morning and my parents hadn't gotten up, and I cleaned up the living room and made menus, and I wanted to make them breakfast like they were at a hotel, and they came out and everything was set up for them. And I remember them being in awe. And I was like addicted in that moment to the feeling of surprising somebody through something I created in the environment. And that's where it began for me, was that one moment, creating a menu for my parents for breakfast and their reaction to it. And I wonder, even had their reaction been different, would my life have totally been different? I don't know.
And
Yeah.
then I love all of that. And thank you for connecting with me because there's so much more in the future we're going to geek out on. I
Yeah.
had another download of a memory of the biggest event we did was Canadian Thanksgiving 1996. And I need to go through the whole story. It'll take a minute, but so
Take 5 minutes.
the venue was called Shock Nightclub, and at the time, this is in Toronto. It was the largest nightclub in North America. So the capacity was 3,500 people at the time. I'm sure
Wow.
there's larger now, but we were doing what was called an all ages party, which means no ID, no alcohol, just teenagers dancing every Sunday night in the summer. And we the Labor Day was coming up, and that would have been the last Sunday before school started. And we knew we wanted to do a Thanksgiving Sunday because of the long weekend. And we thought, how do we do something wild? So I came up with this idea. We called Labor Day Apocalypse. And we said, this is the last ever all ages event at Shock. And then we created this like stage show where my business partner slash best friend Steve was and the MCs of the event were having a fight with the owners of the nightclub uh, because we're like, we need more parties, and they're like, no, you can't. Um and we had 4,000 people at the Labor Day event.
What?
And we the
What?
DJ stopped the music, and we come on stage as if there's like a revolution happening, like we're sticking it to the man. Guess what? We've negotiated. We're going to do one more event here, Thanksgiving Sunday, and literally shockwaves ran through the city.
Yes.
Like, and the memory for me was that Thanksgiving Sunday at like the doors opened at 8 p.m. At 5 p.m. We blocked traffic for miles of cars waiting to get into the parking lot
Oh,
in the daylight.
whoa,
We had a lineup of thousands of people in daylight who,
whoa.
and this is pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-cell phones, like when it was hardcore promotion flyers and promoters. And um, we had 5,000 people get into the club, and we had to, I guess I can say this. The bouncers had to fake the numbers on the clickers because the police were there. We were way over capacity. And then eventually
Whoa.
the police shut the door. They're like, you can't have more people come in. And there were still 2,000 people outside.
What?
And we had a competitor, another
What?
group of kids doing parties, and their club was dead. And they called us saying, you guys crushed us tonight. And we said, don't shut down. Hold on. And we went outside with a bullhorn and we said, everyone go to that other club. So
No way.
within like 20 minutes, they went from 0 people to 2,000 people at their party. And then they came back to our place later to thank us, to think, what the hell did you guys do? And we had no
Dude,
more space. It was the most fun night
were
ever.
you making a lot of money on these?
As a kid, yeah. Like that night, I can't remember the exact, it was relatively a lot. Um,
Yeah. I mean, this was more
for-
than a
for-
couple $100.
yeah, like I would have been 20 years old then. And that night I probably went home with 10,000 in cash, which
Wow.
for a 20-year-old is like insane.
Yeah, it's amazing. But
And
dude, what
scary.
a risk. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people to put in a room. Dude, even like now with all of your ability, it's still a big deal. I mean, for anybody, listen, if you ever hosted a party, you ever try to put people in a room, I don't need to sell you here on how challenging that can be. Crazy,
Right.
man. I did not know that part of the story, but my face hurts from smiling so much right now.
Thanks.
Um, dude, talk to me. I want to ask you a couple more questions. And but before I do, by the way, if somebody is listening to this and they gotta run, but they're like, John, just tell me where to go get tickets to Archangel's event, or how do I know if I'm the right guy? Is it anybody can go? Do I got to be a business owner? Let's do that first, and then I want to ask you some fun questions about some movies, and whatever else we're going to talk about. But yeah, who, where do they get the tickets, how, all the stuff.
If you go to archangel.cc, you'll be able to register there to our newsletter, and then you'll be in our world and you'll be able to get tickets. Or just follow me on social if you want to share the links later. That's a simple way. And the experiences are like our core audience is anyone who's entrepreneurial, whether you run a business or you're a creator or that kind of thing. And it's also, this specific event is geared more personal transformation for people who are leaders and entrepreneurs. So the community is entrepreneurial. The content of that specific day is how to be the best version of you so that you can impact millions of people with your business, your message, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So cool, man. I'm pumped for you, dude. Hey, can I celebrate a win with you, by the way? That
Yes.
I'll tell you something really cool. You'll appreciate this since we're talking about filling rooms and hosting events. So we had our Front Row Dads live event in first week of December here in Austin, and it was just a great group of dudes, about 115-ish people in the room. And on the third day, we offered tickets to next year's event, which sells out at about 115 people. And dude, 82 people bought their tickets on the spot. We didn't even have dates. We're like, we don't know what hotel, we don't know what dates, but next year, early December, you can come back and do this again if you want, and and we'll sell out at about 115. And 82 people bought their ticket on site before they left the room, which was wild. I've never seen anything like it. It's never happened to me at any other event. We've always had success in having energy for people coming back, but not like that. Not like not like that. So
That is
anyway,
a monstrous win.
it's a monstrous win. And the thing is that feels so good about the win is I feel so good imagining how they feel, because you have to feel a certain way to buy a ticket to next year's event.
Right.
And I don't know exactly how that is, how that feels. I can guess. I've been excited myself, but dude, that thrills me.
I can tell you actually. Um,
Yeah.
we do something similar where we don't actually, there's a lot of events where people sell things or pitch things, and we don't sell anything at our experiences. The only thing we do is invite people to come to the next thing.
Yeah.
And often there's a large percentage of people that do that. And the part of my goal was to create an experience that was community first, speakers second. Right. So there's a lot of events where people will go because they want to hear from a specific speaker
Yeah.
or learn, like, get a specific outcome. For me, it was, how do I create a community that people want to be a part of, and everything else is a bonus.
Exactly.
So that
Yep.
you just, like in your case, you don't even have to say the date. It's like, our next one's coming next year. You don't have to announce speakers, date, venue, and people just want to they want to attend because they want to be a part of something bigger.
That's right.
And they trust you with curation of who's in the room. That's what I know I do really well, of curating attendees that are as amazing as the speakers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you do, man. And Brian was at this event, that Brian Johnson and Hal was there as an attendee. But you know, dude, to have the lineup that you have, I know why you put people in the room. Um, hold on, let me say that differently, because it makes it sound like you have people because of the lineup. What I'm attempting to say is the people that you have are incredible. Your community is trusting you, but I totally understand at a very deep level that your brand and your reputation, a lot of it has to do with the feeling, the vibe, the heart, the soul. Like we started the show talking about, Jesse, talking about your magnetic pull with all of these individuals and why people want to stand on your stage. Why they feel it's an honor to stand on your stage. And when you look at
Thank
the
you.
video on the website, like there's some epic people who've stood on your stage and shared with you in your community. So I'm thrilled for you, man. I can't wait to be at one of your events. I've never been. I can't wait to do it. I think it's only a matter of time.
Thanks.
I'm very excited to experience it. I'm excited to witness you and witness your community and to partake in that at some point, because I'm in deep admiration of your work, Gio. I really am. So thank you. On a lighter, and maybe not even a lighter note, but just like a total tangent, completely for selfish reasons here. I want to wrap with a conversation around movies because that, so much of what we've talked about today in different formats has been the conversation around movies, the ones that you've produced and the ones that you've enjoyed. And I told you when we were together, you need to meet my buddy Justin Donald, who he and I go to movies all the time. He loves movies. We talk movies. You'll have that in common with him. He quotes movies constantly. What have been some of your favorite or most influential movies uh, over any length of time? Not even just recent, but like you could pull from your favorites or recent ones that you've seen. But just give me a couple that I might either align with you on or go check out myself.
Ooh. Uh, I think my favorite movie ever is still The Matrix. And
Yeah.
um, I'll give specifics. When it first came out in the theaters, I think it was 1999. It was so it was so science fiction, and yet it felt so realistic. And there's something about that quality of a science fiction movie that feels like it actually could happen. And the technology and the story, all I just felt deeply in love. I saw it at least 3 or 4 times in the theater. I've seen it 20 times since. Um, and now looking back at just how relevant it almost feels like it's a documentary in some weird ways. Um, and I love science fiction. I love fantasy. I love anything superhero, especially, all of these Marvel films that have turned my childhood into real life. Bringing these
Mm,
characters on screen has been magical for me. Um, the Never Ending Story, because it was the first.
yeah.
I still watch it.
Atreyu.
Still love that movie. I probably memorized half of it. And then anything Christopher Nolan, because his cinematography and story and Interstellar, those kinds of films are incredible. Anything like that, where actually my only real gauge is, um, am I emotional and have I lost track of time? If I'm in a movie theater
Mm,
and I don't check my watch, that's usually a good sign. And then, one of my more recent favorites, not that it's an incredible film, but just it resonated for me, was The Greatest Showman. So
yeah.
I felt like this is my story on a screen. Obviously not a circus person, but I kind of am. Um, and the all of the music, because I love music. We have performers and musicians and vocalists and opera singers at every event we do. There's some kind of music
Mm.
element. And I feel like life needs a soundtrack, right? So that film really brought it out for me. Then I think I cried 10 times in the theater the first time I saw it.
Dude, do you know Peter Katz?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, his voice, his music. We've had him do a couple help out with a couple of our events, and dude, he had people in tears. He was
Peter
so good.
Peter performed at our wedding.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
Stop.
He's an
Come
amazing
on.
friend. And he sang a song for my wife walking down the aisle. And then he actually performed for our first dance.
Stop. Stop. Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that guy. So good. Have you seen Gran Turismo?
Yes.
What did you think? I don't want to bait you. I'll just full disclosure. I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm just curious if you are smart and like it also, or I'm just kidding. I'm joking, man. I'm joking. I'm
I
joking.
uh I thought it was way better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like I just I took my kids and we were in awe. It was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. I had the same reaction. I had the bar set very low.
Yeah,
Because with something like Top Gun, I felt like the bar was so high. And by the way, still delivered. I like that movie. But this one, I had nothing. I just went in going, well, let's see what this is about. And then I was blown away. I thought that was, and actually, I was looking for an excuse to talk about this movie with the guys, but from a father-son perspective, like just from that angle, it was a beautiful story, I felt,
it
you
was.
know. Yeah, very, very cool. For me, Rudy was the movie as a kid that really got me. And because I was short, and that movie really hit me, of somebody who didn't let his physical stature get in the way of
Right.
his impact in the world. And so that was my core wound, was being short as a kid. Yeah. Anyway, dude, well, keep me on your like favorite movies list. And whether they're your movies or other movies that you've seen, I'd love to hear what you think. And I'd love to connect with you in the future over those. And Gio, thanks so much for opening up your heart today, sharing some of your life stories. You know, really appreciate that so much, and just rooting for you in every way.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
Yeah, yeah, dude, it definitely has been. Anything else that you want to say? Anything I've left, any stone left unturned that you want to close with, or you feel complete?
I, in the same way that you're having those conversations with the child in 10 years, or the idea of thinking about the future, I can't wait after you experience one of my, especially the big events, with the way we're doing it, to have the conversation after that about
Mm,
debriefing as someone who does events.
yeah,
What the hell just happened?
yeah, yeah. Awesome, man. Wow. Excited about that, brother. Thank you so much. And yeah, just let 2024 be a wonderful journey for both of us and our families and our communities. And if I can be of service to you, I would say this as soon as we stopped recording. So I'm just going to say it now. I want to be a great resource to you and to all the endeavors that you have before you, because I really do honor those who are holding space and creating containers and environments for people to thrive and to find themselves and to find each other, and then to find, you know, their truth and their fullest expression. That's it, their fullest expression in places where they're safe to do so. So yeah, I very much want to be helpful for you. That would be a dream of mine, is that a decade from now we look back and say, I'm super grateful for how Jon showed up for me, what he was able to provide, how generous he was. That's who I aspire to be in your space and in the space of so many. So I'm just going to put that out there now.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thanks again. Guys, check it out. Archangel Summit. It's coming up in September on the 1st, right? September 1st, you said? Is that
21st.
21st? Sorry, I wrote the date wrong. September 21st, Archangel Summit. We'll link to everything in the notes, or if you guys have any questions, just shoot us a message, team@frontrodads.com. We can help you out, send you any links for Gio's stuff. Watch the movies, guys. Get this on your family movie watch list. Watch Dreamer to start. I saw Hal's comment on your Instagram post where he loved Dreamer, and he also you know, is looking forward to Hero. So much good work. That's it, guys. Go check them out. Gio, thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.